Good morning. Welcome to WinCAMS webinar number 7. First webinar of the 2021 season. As you just heard, I am recording this and I will post it on our website and on our YouTube channel. If you're not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, it's called the WinCAMS channel, and it has all the webinars that we've done, and you can, if you're having trouble sleeping or anything like that, you're welcome to check those out. What we're talking about today is WinCAMS administration. So this is for people that manage the WinCAMS instance and manage users and manage the programs and interact with me and my staff and et cetera, et cetera. I've put together a little outline here, as you can see, but I'm totally open for questions. If you want to butt in and unmute yourself, you could do that, or you can type into the chat and I will try to get to it as I can. So let me know if anything doesn't make sense, or you want me to do something again, or I'm not explaining something correctly, or whatever. Okay, let's get started. So let's see here. So our first topic is WinCAMS administration. A lot of it is going to be about managing users. WinCAMS, we do not, we've never had seat licenses. When we sell a license to a new site, we do take into account how large that agency is. But if you want, we've had sites that go from 10 users up to 100 users, and it's a pretty friendly call because they call me and say, hey, how can we expand our user base? Just add more users. We're not keeping track. We actually, we did have an exciting milestone recently. I don't know why we were checking it, but one of my developers did a query on our total users, and we're over 10,000 now. So that's pretty fun. So if we've had people that sort of take subsidiary departments under their wing and they just add them in, or if somebody wants to try it out, or you want to give something a go, there's no downside to that. So you can create users anytime you want. So let's see here. I need to change my screen sharing. 1 second here. How do I do that? There we go. Okay, so creating users is very simple. And oops, come on. Well, maybe I'll share my other screen. Sorry. Come on. There we go. Got it. Okay. So creating users is very simple. It's going to be under File, System, and Security. So you've got users and you've got groups. Okay. So anyone can get into users. These are the only programs in WinCAMS that ask you for your password again when you go in here. This is kind of the coffee break check, so that if you walk away from your desk, someone can't come in that's not an admin and come in and manipulate their access. So we'll ask you that for your password again before we start these up. And if you are a system admin, you'll be able to see all the users, but if you're not, you'll just see yourself, and you won't be able to change your security. You'll only be able to change, like a few, like your password and stuff. Okay, so it should come in on yourself, your own user ID, right? And if you want to create a new one, you can just hit plus, give it any user ID you want. The maximum, I believe, now is 32 characters. Probably the most important thing for a user is tying it to an employee number. The reason we want to tie a user to an employee number is so that when you go into time cards, particularly pay period time cards, we know who you are, right? So you can have multiple users with the same employee number, but what we want to know is when you go into pay period time cards and you start up your time card, we want to know who you are as an employee in the system, right? So that we can, everything flows from there, right? So it's important to pick an employee number, and it also helps you so that we fill in any information that we might have from that employee number. And then initials, initials have to be unique. So if they're not, that's how we do the little checks, you know, where it says a record was created by someone or edited by someone. The initials that's how we tell who did that. And that's one of the only things that goes wrong, very minor thing, but it goes wrong if you delete a user, right? If somebody leaves or retires or whatever, and you delete a user, it's possible that we'll go back and you know, we won't be able to translate that person's initials into their name. That's all. Frankly, it was not a great decision to use those initials. We've had, you know, our clients that have 4 and 5 and 800 users. It's just annoying. So they have to have like MA6 and just dumb stuff to keep everybody unique. You can put phone numbers in here. If you're creating a user for their password, you can, for my purposes, you can have no password if you want. A lot of places put in the county name like Fresno or whatever, and then they ask the users to change that, and I'll show you how that's done. So I'm going to put in our county name, Lane, here in Eugene, Oregon, and then that will, and then I would just tell the new user your password is Lane, and then or Public Works or whatever you want it to be, and then ask them to change it, and I'll tell you how they can change it. The expiration date defaults to 20 years in the future. If you want to set this, you probably wouldn't want to set it on a brand new user, but if you wanted to set this for someone and disable their you know that they're going to quit or retire or their contract is ending or something, you could expire them at a date in the future. Of course, they're going to default to being active. We want them to be an active user ID. If I turn this off, they will no longer be able to use WinCAMS. So if I want to turn them off temporarily, I could do that. System administration is probably everybody here in this webinar right now, these are people that can access everything in WinCAMS, can create and edit users, can delete users, and have access to absolutely everything. And when we start talking about security, system administration bypasses all security. So I see a lot, people have themselves, a power user has themselves as a system admin, and then they're also in a bunch of security groups. Doesn't hurt anything, but it's totally unnecessary. Just put yourself in system administration and move on. And there's nothing, because what would be the point? If I'm a system admin, so I have the ability to set security, then what's the point of setting security? Because I could just go in and give myself more rights. I can't reduce my rights. So if you're a system admin, you have access to everything. This checkbox for viewing billed amounts, as it says, it's in projects and facility management service requests. We had a couple sites, or one site I think, that wanted to have some users that were not real users and only could see billed amounts. So this was like, I want to have people review service requests. You know, Linda Library wants to review service requests, but we don't want her to see what it cost us. We want her to see what it cost her when we billed her. Okay. Now since then we have a better system where they can see what they're being billed and see their service requests and such on our web portal for facilities. So I don't think that gets used much. Let's see. And you want to do this in the current fiscal year. My current fiscal year is 15-16, just because I don't roll it forward ever, but this has been a bit of a bone of contention. We all security in WinCAMS comes from the current fiscal year, right? And so you lose the ability to give someone access in 2021 and take away their access in 2018. That is true. You lose that ability, but you gain the ability to give them access in 2021 and have it just apply to everywhere. So we decided that that was more useful to most of our users, was to have that, you know, be able to just set them up in one place and then not worry about it. And because otherwise we'd either have to have a push system that pushed them to other fiscal years, or you'd have to actually log in to different fiscal years and go and start entering Martin in every year you want him to be able to access. Okay, so I save these there. That's what I was talking about. These initials are already in use, so those initials have to be unique. Okay, so now I've saved this user and it's got a password lane and the user ID is test. Okay, so I did not make this person a system admin. This is just a regular user. I'm going to think about what they are doing. A couple things though that I wanted to mention in here, and I'll get to security next. We're going to set up security. Locks are you can lock people out. Some of our, I'm not really sure why they wanted this, but we have some people that some admins that want to lock people out or lock everyone out, or I don't know what, but it's if they have problems with installing patches, or I don't know why. So you can set a temporary lock that will expire and then release and open them up again. We also have a password complexity option. Now I know you're groaning, but because I cannot stand password complexity rules, it's just the worst ever. But if you want them, so like I said, we don't have any need for you to have complex passwords. You can have no password, whatever you want, but if you want password complexity, you can go to File, System, and Control File. And in here, there are a bunch of options for password complexity rules right here in the center. So you can have a minimum length of your passwords, maximum length, minimum uppercase, minimum lowercase, minimum special characters, and minimum numerals, okay? Do you have to lock them one by one, or is there a way to lock everyone at once? That's a good question, Nia. That's a very good question. I can't imagine that we would have done it that way. I'm gonna have to research that. I don't know. I mean, it seems like such a weird, it frankly seems like such a strange request, and I need to figure out what the purpose of that is. I remember when we did it, and I'm just blanking on why you'd want to lock somebody out temporarily. I agree. I could see locking everyone out, you know, to install something or to run a conversion or a data load or something like that. That would make sense. But I'll research that. Okay, so you lock everyone out. Yeah, there's other ways to lock everyone. I mean, see, the funny thing is, if I'm already in, then I'm already in, right? And so we're not checking this lock, I don't think. We're checking this lock over and over. You can lock everybody out in various heavy-handed ways too. You can just rename the CAMS program, and everybody's on the server, and everybody's icon will suddenly not work anymore, right? So you have that option too. Okay, so password complexity, build amounts only. So you've got this here, and so back to the password, when that person logs in, well, first let's do security, sorry. Linked files, we just throw linked files in everywhere because, you know, if you want something, or if you want them to, if there's some sort of, I don't know, contract or document that you did for them, or something that you can tie to this person's ID. Okay, so let's talk about security a little bit. Oh, and actually I want to talk, so obviously to disable a user, you can just turn off their active, right? So if you turn that off and save it, they're disabled, okay? And I can see everyone in the directory, but if I was if I actually logged in as Martin, I would only be able to see Martin, okay? So now security, I'll get to everything in there. Security is set up by groups, okay? So it's totally up to you. We have places that are, especially small places, where they say, hey, we're all pals here. We all work together. We're frankly in the same room. So we're not really worried about security. We'll just make everybody a system admin. That's fine with me. Other places have a lot of security, hundreds of users, and maybe I've even had 3 or 4 instances of, what do you want to call it, bad actors, bad apples, whatever, that, and so people want to be really careful, or people that are lying about, oh, I didn't update that record, or whatever else. So they want to be really careful. So it's really up to you. So I kind of think of it as a few ways of setting up groups. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go to File, System, Security, and Groups. Again, it's gonna ask us for our password, our system admin password. So groups, you can set up any way you want. You can honestly set it up, if you have a small operation, you could set up a group for a single person. You know, that kind of thwarts the idea of groups, but you could set up a group called Ayren and then give me the rights you want me to have. What I see more often is either by module, by function, or by employment group, okay? So, so if you were doing it by module, then there are 2 kinds of, this is just some, so this is kind of, so here's a facilities group. And if I go to facilities group, I don't know what this means, but they have access to a whole bunch of different things. By the way, if you create a group, then what you should see here, we can load all the modules into the grid, or you can do modules one by one. So it should have only the modules that you have in your contract, and you know, if you want, whichever modules apply, right? So if I want to create a group for each module, right? So I could create a group for each one of these modules. None of you have this many modules, but if you had 10 modules or something, you could say, okay, I'm going to create a direct charges group. And that is going to be, I'm going to put anyone into that group that I want to have access to direct charges and accounts payable. Okay. And I'm going to create a roads group, and I'm going to create a time cards group, or whatever like that. So that's where I would say that's by module. Then there's by function, right? Like time card data entry, or, you know, fleet supervision, or mechanics, things like that, right? Which kind of overlaps with by employment grouping, because I also see that. I see oftentimes groups that are defined by groups of employees, right? So here's, well, see, so this is by function. Okay, facilities is sort of by, here's some examples. So here's Bernard. Bernard is maybe a group and specific rights for Bernard, okay? And then there's another one that says facilities. So that's like this is either a module group for our facilities module, or it's a employment function, like a division. Your facilities people have access to these modules, okay? And, you know, so it's really up to you. But the way usually there's in larger operations, there's 4 or 5 people that all should have access to the same set of programs. And speaking of, there are 2 types of access. There's module rights, and then there's program rights, okay? So This is really critical. If I am a member of two groups, I get the sum total of their access. So if one of my groups has this bridge module here and another one does not, I get the bridge module. And if I'm in both groups, okay, so they accumulate rights. However, within a given group, module rights take a backseat to program rights. So if you want to give somebody either no rights to the module and just rights to one program, say time cards or invoices, right? Or you want to give them full rights to the module, right? I have full rights to the AP module, but then I want to go into program rights and say, okay, for AP, you know, vendors, I only want to be able to them to be able to browse. Okay, so I want to give people in this group full rights to the AP module, but we only want them to be able to browse in vendors, so I can do that, right? So program rights within a group override module rights. Now, if I'm also in another group that happens to have full rights to the entire module of AP, then this is a moot point for me, right? Okay, so let's talk about what the rights mean in general. Full rights, if you check full rights, it checks all these except for browse, right? So you've got browse only is exactly what it sounds like. You can look, but you can't touch, or you can touch, but you can't edit, you can't insert, you can't delete. Edit is you can change existing records. And remember, this is very across the board. So editing means editing an existing, say, well, if we're in bridges, I can edit an existing bridge, but I can also edit like a line, a detail line in a bridge. Or if I'm like some people have gotten burned by, they'll give their mechanics, they'll take away delete rights, right, in vehicles. And that's because they don't want their mechanics to delete vehicles or delete repair orders and things like that. Well, that's fine, except that also takes away their ability to delete lines, to perform any delete action in those programs. So then the mechanic goes in and tries to delete like a PM service line that's attached to a vehicle, or a maintenance code line that's attached in a grid to a repair order, and then we block it, which is fine. I mean, I always use the analogy of the grocery store where somebody has to call over a manager in order to remove something from their ticket, right? It's fine if that's what you want, but be careful what you wish for. So we got browse only, edit rights, insert rights, delete rights, post rights, and then the most unusual one is sensitive rights, sensitive info rights. It used to be really only made a difference for two modules. One was employees, right there. We have separate access for employees, even though it's inside the applied charges modules in your module in your menus. We have separate access for employees because there are lots of people who you want to have access to time cards, but not access to the employee screen. Now, sensitive rights in the employee screen takes away access to their personal info, right? If you have social security numbers, phone numbers, addresses, and things like that. So you can have people that maybe can update their assignment with their rate or something like that, or their job class, but you don't want them to be able to access personal info. You can turn off sensitive info. The other thing sensitive info works on is the time cards or applied charges module. If you have sensitive info rights, then you are what's called a payroll clerk timekeeper. Okay, so if you've used pay period time cards and you've got the supervisor tab, you may literally supervise 4 or 5 or 7 or 40 people. So those are the ones you can see because you're listed as their supervisor. But as soon as we built that construct, people called me and said, well, I agree with that construct, but I also have people that don't supervise anybody that need to be able to see and edit everyone, which kind of it's like a backdoor into time cards, which frustrated me, but that's how you get there. If you give a group sensitive rights to time cards, then regardless of who they supervise and regardless of their access level, they will be able to see other people in time cards and edit other people and do the check marks on the status tab to submit for people and things like that, okay? And now there's a third sensitive info option when you use linked files. Let's see if I have a linked file to pull in. Okay, so if I drag in this linked file, right, and this properties pops up because I told it I have a I have this checked this checked, edit properties after insert. So it automatically, as soon as I drag a file in here, it asks me to set the properties. And so if I gotta click this, that's why. So if I'm editing the properties, there's a sensitive checkbox now, okay? And that says exactly what it says right there. Only users with sensitive rights can access this file. And this is not just in the CAMS group list or the security, this is everywhere. So if you want to be able to store medical notes or employee evaluations or anything that is private data or shouldn't be accessed by just anyone accessing that program, you can set the sensitive, and then you won't see anything for yourself, right? But it will ask you if you want to move the file into the sensitive folder. So if you want to start using sensitive data for linked files, you must, well, I shouldn't say you must. You will want to talk to your IT and make sure that they change the access to this folder right here. So where mine says SQL new, yours is going to probably say WinCAMS or something like that. And then below WinCAMS, there will be an XXX files, which is for so for Nia, it's San Mateo, that's SMA files, then linked files, then sensitive, right? So we store it in the linked files, and so we'll move the file down into the sensitive folder. So you want to make sure that people can't, that your IT only gives certain people access to that sensitive folder. And in addition, if I was not a sensitive rights user in this area, it would say hidden or redacted or something like that. It would not show me the path to this file anymore, and I would not be able to double click on it and open it, right? Which I can do now. Okay. So this was developed, I think, primarily for employee documents or whatever, but anything you want to keep sensitive, then it allows you to let people into that program without letting them have access to all the sensitive stuff. But remember that there is a back door, and they can just go outside of CAMS and go look at the file unless you make sure that. That's why we offer to move it into the sensitive folder so that you can, so your IT can lock it down, okay? Because it's just out on your server. Okay, so we got module rights, we got program rights. Let's go, and we were creating a group, as I recall. Here's our XXX group. So when you're creating a group, you want to think about, well, what do I just want? Do I want to go bottom up, right? Like I want to just build their specific rights, and their specific rights might just be the time cards program, or it might just be a single module or something like that. Or do I want to go top down and kind of start from a large group of rights and then maybe narrow down? So I could add a single module right here, right? So I could say, okay, I'm gonna add the AP module, right? And I'm going to say they have it defaults to browse rights for the entire module. Okay, so anyone that is in this group is going to have browse rights to the entire module. Now, I may say, in addition to that, I want to, and by the way, this units of measure, we had to do this, add these automatically because they get used in different modules and people were having trouble. It doesn't matter, but several different modules use our units of measure setup program. And so if you don't have that in there, then and it's a single program. And so if you go give somebody the engineering module, then they still can't use units of measure because you didn't give them the CA module. So I could say, okay, I'm going to start with browse only for the entire AP module because I want them to be able to browse and run reports and different things. But I'm going to, but one of their main parts of their job is to actually enter invoices. So I'm going to, and I just got asked this question the other day by Tehama County. So there's 3 types of programs in our language. Online is any program where you enter data, any transactions, time cards, invoices, fuel, repair orders, anything like that, or a master, employees, ledgers, budget ledger, anything where you can, what I'm doing right now, this is an online program, right? Because I'm entering data. Then reports are obviously reports, and batch are posting programs, things that gather up a lot of things and then perform an action on those things, okay? So that's just the way we group them. So I might say, okay, for this particular group, I want them to be able to have more access to invoices, right? So I might give them full rights to invoices. And whether that's including sensitive, I don't know. And I'm also going to give them maybe, journals or something like that. Maybe they also do journals. Oops, I didn't give them any access. So I'll give them full rights to that, but not sensitive. Okay. So now remember that so I gave them minimal access to the accounts payable module, so they can go look at vendors and see a address or a fax number or something like that. And then I gave them more enhanced rights to just these 2 programs. So now anybody in this group will have at least these rights. They may have more rights because they may be in other groups as well. Okay, so so now the next step is to put users into this group. And I can do that one of 2 ways. I can go to my specific user, right? I was creating Martin Adams, so I can go in and add him to a group. Here's my XXX group. Now he's in my XXX group. I could add him to other groups. Or I could go from the group, if I'm creating a new group, which I was, then I could go to the users tab. See, Martin's already there, but I could also add some other person, Bernie, okay, to this group. Okay, so now each of these guys have, in addition to whatever rights they might have by being in other groups, then they also have all the rights afforded by this group. Okay. So groups accumulate program rights, override module rights within a group. One tricky thing to think about is that these program rights do not override module rights in another group. If I'm also in another group that just has like AP full rights, well then these program rights don't bring me down, right? So you want to think about, people say, well, what should I do for my mechanics? Well, the obvious ones are they should be able to enter repair orders, and they should be able to at least look at the vehicle master, probably full access to the vehicle master, depending on how you feel. And then it becomes about other things. Do you want to just give them the vehicle module? Do you want to give them the shop inventory module? Do you want to, I don't know, it's how detailed you want to be and how much, I sometimes encourage people, just try it, and and encourage them to come, to email you or to yell at you if they need access to something. Because I've definitely seen people lock it down too much, and they say, well, I'm going to give my parts guys only access to issues and receipts and not to adjustments. And then they realize that the parts guys are entering adjustments every day, and they've kind of really crippled their ability to work. Let's see. So, and by the way, when you don't have any, so if any of these rights, browse, edit, insert, delete, post, any of these rights means you can get into the program, right? And these are called program level rights, whether they're module or program, it doesn't matter. They give you access to the program, and as opposed to record level rights. And the only places we have record level rights are right here in security. There are times when you can only see yourself, and in time cards, right, where you can only see people you supervise, or you can only see yourself, etc. We do not have record level rights in invoices. We don't have any facility right now, any functionality that says, you know, Joe can only see Joe's invoices. Joe can narrow down to his invoices, but if he wants to go look at Cheryl's invoices, he certainly can. Okay. So if you give someone no rights by either just not having the module here at all, not having the program here at all, or unchecking everything in this thing, then they won't even see it on their menu, and their menu will come up. That's what we're doing when you run WinCAMS and you log in. What am I working on? CSC. So when you run WinCAMS and you log in as Martin, this stuff right here, initializing menus, this is doing three things. Well, at least two things, three things. It's checking your security to see what programs you have access to, and it's turning on and off menu items so that you don't, or it's disabling them at least, so you don't have to they don't have to be in your way. It's checking whether the program exists, right? Because we don't want to show you a program and then have it crash when it tries to call that file. So if for some reason you are missing a program, even though you have it in your security, we want to turn it off. And then the third thing it's checking is some configuration settings that turn things on and off. So you can see here that most things are turned off for this test guy, right? You remember that I had that units of measure, so he has everything turned off in the estimates, bids, and contracts module except for units of measure. But in direct charges, he's got just about everything, right? No posting, but he's got lots and lots of programs. Right? Now remember that if you have someone that has limited functionality, now nobody has this many modules in your site, but if you've narrowed somebody down to 5 modules out of your 10 or whatever, it's important to tell them go to File and Settings and Hide Disabled, okay? And then you get a much cleaner menu. And if you're setting up a time card only user, there's no reason for them to go into the menu at all. They can just go directly into the program. And I believe you can do that with any of our programs, but we definitely set up icons for time card only users. Okay. All right. So that's the menu setup, and of course you should all know about explaining to people about how to set up their MyCAMS menu so that they can configure it and say, okay, you notice that it only shows them the programs in MyCAMS that they actually have access to. So they go in and, you know, say, okay, my favorite programs are these 3 that I use the most, and now that person, Martin, will have those 3 programs in his MyCAMS. Okay, and of course his recently used programs as well. Okay, modules, programs, cumulative groups, sensitive rights. So, you know, I don't recommend that people do a big overhaul on their security. What I've seen mostly is that people have kind of random security. Frankly, I have a little bit random security. Actually, this is interesting. If I go in as Martin, this is what I was saying before, and he goes into himself, right, lane, you can, oops, I'm already in the, it's bringing up my other guy. So hold on a second here. Let me go in. I'm logged in as a power user in addition to being logged in as Martin. Okay, so we wanted to restart that program. So I have no program rights. So apparently I can't even get in there at all. But even if I did have some program rights, if I gave myself, so now I'm logged in as the other person. If I gave access to the system management programs right here with browse only, or even edit and insert and delete, the fact that I am not a system admin, right? Let's go try it again. Let's see if I can get into here now. Not yet. All right, hold on. So I added CA rights to Martin's group. Let's try it again here. Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Last big ski trip I went on. Canceled Alaska this year. Was supposed to be in 10 days, but we'll roll it over to 2022. Okay, so Martin was test. Oh, I should show you how he can change his own password as well. Okay, let's see if this will get us in there now. Okay, so now Martin can get into here and it comes up as Martin, and you can see that he's not authorized to get to the directory, and he can't move around, right? He can't go look at other people. So he really can't do anything, and he can't even get to his groups because we don't want him to add more groups to himself. So he can change his name, I guess, and his password and his phone number if he needs to, right? But he can mostly do all that just as when he's logging in, right? So, and that's because he's not a system admin. If you're a system admin, you can get into everybody. So now if we go, I wanted to show you. So remember, I set his password to our county name or whatever your standard is, and then you've got your so if I go in and I put in test and lane, you'll see as soon as I type in the correct password, a user info tab pops up here. So this can be true for anyone. Anyone can go in here and change their own password. Okay. And I think that we've batted around the idea of password expiration, but I don't think we've ever implemented it. So if that's something that seems really useful, we could do it pretty easily, but we have not ever implemented password expiration that would force them to change their password. Okay, let's see here. So I'm gonna go back in as my power user, Bernie. And power users, so once you get your security set up, you may want to report on it. So I can go to File, System, Security, and I have two reports, User Groups Report, and so this just shows it defaults to by user. I'm not sure, Chrissy. Chrissy's asking if you set the system to lock everybody out at a future time, like overnight, and they haven't logged out before they left for the day, will it kick them out? I need to research the locks. I'm actually not familiar with what that's doing. So I'll put your name on that too and see if I can understand it a little bit better. So I did this user groups report by user. So then it's sorted by user, right? Odd, Alex, BB, Ben, whatever. And then it said which group ID they're in and the description of that group. And you notice that David King is in two groups and some people are in one group, right? So I can also do it in reverse, do it by group. So now I see that the admin group has Alex and Bill 2, the health group has Bill and HRA and HSA, right? the shop group has 6 different people in it, etc. So this, this is just the groups and who's in them and who's in which groups. And then there's one that gives you much more information called the access rights report. Okay, Sue, maybe I'll just send it to everybody who attended here. So access rights report, so it says, do you want to show what modules and programs people have access to? And let's just see what it does. I always tell people with reports, don't be afraid, just hit the go button. Worst thing that'll happen is it'll say there's thousands of records and you might want to narrow it down, but if it takes too long, but you can't hurt anything with a report. So this is doing a lot more work because, of course, all these people have a lot of different access. So you can see here, I've got 16,000 records because of all the access that people have and don't have. So I might want to show, well, who has access to only a specific group or whatever, or only a specific module. So Ott has access to one program, edit and insert rights. Alex has access to a ton of programs, right, in each module here, hence the 158 pages of access. So I could be looking for, specific program and who has access. I could be looking for a specific group and what's going on, the access for a specific user. I could be showing modules only and not just programs. And then I could, this will even show me all the programs that people don't have access to, which is a little, so here's a 5-page report because I said modules only, right? So now I get, here's Alex, and this is only people that have access to a module. So you notice Ott is gone, both in this report and in our office. And so he does, because he only had access to one program, right? So he doesn't have access to any modules. Okay. So that's what this shows us. And so this can kind of be nice because I can see that what Bernie has access to as the sum total of all of his groups. It may not be as clear because I go to Bernie's login and his user ID, and I see that he's in 3 groups or 2 groups or a couple groups or whatever, and I'm not sure what those groups do exactly. So this tells me nicely just what he has access to. Okay. So let's see, that's security reporting. Is there anything else we need to talk about security reporting? I don't think so. That's all we need to do there. Okay, that's kind of it for security. I don't think I think that's about it. Let me know if you have any other questions. So we're gonna get some information about the locking functionality, and then and I'll get it out to you guys. So the next topic I wanted to talk about that a lot of administrators are confused about or frustrated by or don't understand is installing patches. Okay, so when you call us or when I give one of our staff an assignment, or when we notice something's wrong, or you report a bug, or we do a change order for you, we create what's called a trouble ticket. It's an internal system that we have that looks a lot like a WinCAMS program. You can see it right here. This is an internal system that we can assign. We have all of our clients in here. And I said, Trevor, Tehama got a new module, set up the format of their general ledger to match their budget, blah, 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 blah. And so we have the contact, who it's assigned to, we can keep track of statuses. And this, so the reason I'm showing you this is because this then we have linked files, we have all the same stuff you guys have, and then most importantly, we can create a patch. Okay, so when we finish this, we have a patch button that allows us to create a patch for a client. So that's why you see, so when this is done for Ellen, Trevor is going to send her an email that says patch 26187 is ready. Okay, and what that means when a patch is ready, so if you want to refer to this thing, if you have a patch number, I'm sorry, a ticket number, you can always ask any of us, right? I can say, well, I want to show only tickets for Tehama County. I want to show only tickets assigned to Trevor if he gets sick or whatever, right? So you could, this is a good way to refer to these numbers here. And then that is also how we standardize the patch numbers, okay? So when Trevor finishes this and he says, okay, Ellen, we're going to, and he creates a patch, he can create a patch, he can create sort of really 3 types of patches. One is programs and library files. Okay, so that's where he wants to replace a file on your server, right? So in this case, he's doing a format change. Let's see. I don't know. We have all kinds of things here, but okay, here we go. Somebody asked, Deschutes County asked us to add the repair order reason value to the columns in the view repair orders tab of the vehicle master. Okay, so when Matt, this is Matt, when I assigned this to him, and then when he did it, he created a patch that says it's the same number, it starts with the same number here, and he put a purpose of the change, and now we've shipped it. We've created the patch. It's out there on our FTP site, and it's available for Randy. Okay, and then hopefully, presumably, he also emailed Randy and said patch 26180 is ready. Please test it. Okay, so what you're going to see when we go to the patch manager, what you're going to see is oftentimes, now Randy's going to go into there and he's going to see 26180, which he knows that he asked for, and he asked for it late last week, and then we got it out to him right away. So he's waiting for this, and he's like, great, this is awesome, these guys are great. But we have to decide at that point whether we want to give that to everybody, or because it's super cool, or because it's a bug that's being fixed, or whatever. And what we usually do is exactly what Matt did, is we just give it to Deschutes County, who asked for it, because they know what they're looking for, they know what they want, and they can test it for us. And hopefully Randy is going to install patch 26180, and then he's going to reply back, it works great, thanks. And then it will trickle out to anyone else who gets this vehicle and equipment master probably won't even notice, but there will be a new column for repair order reason in the view repair orders tab of the vehicle master, right? And so we don't feel that that's a bug, that's just a little enhancement. And honestly, what I'm most worried about is that either Matt messed something up, like it's happened before, that you add a field to the tab, and then that for whatever reason creates some slowdown or calculation or startup problem. And so if we were to send that out to every single person, we just it's happened before, of course, you probably have all experienced it, where all of a sudden the program isn't working the way it should. And so now I've got 100 clients that are especially with key programs like time cards or vehicle master or something like that, and they're just like, it won't start up, or it's freezing, or it's locking, and it's just an inadvertent mistake. So it's really nice to get that hopefully beta tested by Randy, and then let it trickle out, right? Now, if it's a real bug, then we certainly might want to send it to everyone. If it's a catastrophic bug or a data loss, we're going to send it to everybody, and we're going to notify you and say that we have discovered something that is important, and we really want you to install it before you post or before you do anything, or immediately. Okay, so that's where your patches come from, is from our trouble ticket system. And people ask me a lot, well, how do I know what patches to install? Install everything. That we want you to be on probably a weekly schedule would be great, to install every patch. It's very easy. It should not be a big hardship, and it shouldn't take very long, especially if you do it weekly. And I cannot tell you the number of times that I have logged into people's systems and they have 200 patches sitting there, or they contact us about about a problem, and then before we even troubleshoot it, we say, well, you don't even have the most current anything, frankly, so let's get your patches installed first and see if we could, because so often, you know, if there's a problem, any problem you're experiencing probably is being experienced by other people, and it's probably already been fixed. So it's really good to get on a system. And if you don't want to get on a system, or you are or don't want to deal with it, or you have a lot of trouble with replacing programs on your server because of you have a lot of people in a lot of locations and you can't get everybody off, or you don't want to deal with it after hours, we have an enhanced maintenance agreement that is about 2 hours of our time per month, where we will install your patches after hours. And that's called an ISM agreement, and we will take care of all patch installs for you. We'll take a greater role in management of your server, test instances, which we're going to talk about in a bit, backups, all that stuff, right? And you know, that leads us into discussion of hosting and all that kind of thing. But if you don't have a strong IT department, or your IT department is not willing to do it, or you don't want to do it, contact me and we can enhance your maintenance agreement, and just we'll take care of it, and you won't have to worry about it ever again. So there are 3 types of patches. One, the most common, is we replace a program. So this patch right here is Matt replacing the vehicle and equipment master. So it's not all of CAMS, it's just the vehicle and equipment master. So this patch cannot be installed if somebody is running the vehicle and equipment master, and that's because Windows won't allow it. And we've thought about this. I know this is a headache sometimes for you. This is a real, like, if you'll notice, if you install something on your computer like Adobe Acrobat, or honestly like a update to Chrome or a browser update, it usually says, okay, I want to restart now. I want to restart the program, or I want to restart your whole computer. And so we don't have that option because it's your server. So we're not going to restart the server, and we don't want to lock everybody out. But places, like I said, that have a lot of users and they're in a lot of places, can really struggle with this. So we don't have a lot of great solutions. We've experimented a little bit with what we call loading local, which is where everybody, when they run programs in WinCAMS, they actually pull it down onto their workstation first, and then they're running their own copy of the program on their workstation. So then we can replace the stuff on the server at any time. But this is just this is one of the perils of client server stuff, right? So we can force patches in for you, and all we do when we force patches in, to be honest, is just rename the program. And so it's kind of a sketchy, thin ice thing, because so somebody's running the program and you get a message that says I can't install that patch. Well, all we do is we go rename that program on the server, and then Windows will allow us to install that program at that point. But the people that are running the program are actually still connected to the old version. So that's not ideal. The other types of patches we can do are queries that show that are scripts that we're trying to update your data. So we can update your data in every database you have, or in a single database, you know, like fix up just a mistaken piece of data, or back out a posting, or whatever we want to do. And then the third are INI changes. Those are configuration file changes. Okay, you don't need to worry about which ones are which, but those are the types of patches we get. So where do you install patches? I guess I should say that. A lot of people don't even realize that. So you can run it outside of CAMS, but you can also get to it within CAMS. File, system update. Okay, and it's going to bring up a different program. The first thing it does is it looks out on our FTP site for any patches that have your name on them. Okay, and here they are, right? Here's this nice list. If you're interested in looking at them, you can. If you click on any of them, it'll say hopefully a pithy, interesting problem description and who did it and who it was for. But sometimes that doesn't really make any sense to you. Sometimes our developer didn't, maybe got a little technical, or sometimes it wasn't even for you originally. It was for another client, and then we just decided to push it to everyone. So, but the point is that what we don't want is you picking and choosing patches if we can help it. And the reason we don't want that is because your database and your libraries and your programs need to all be in sync, right? They need to all be at the same level. If a program gets sent to you that, right? So here, create new tables for repair order job statuses. This is an important patch because if you get the repair orders that wants to look for job statuses and we haven't created the tables, the repair orders program is going to suddenly crash. So if somebody skips this patch because they don't care about repair order job statuses, and then they go and they get some other patch that says, right, large update to add drag and drop features to the linked files tabs, well, they're going to get the current repair orders screen with that, and then if they haven't installed this patch, then that repair orders program will crash. Okay, so what we recommend, or what we demand, or what we ask, is that you just click that right there, the top one, and let it check everything. And then it's a 2-click, that one and then that one. Okay, and it'll just go through and it'll install each patch. I don't want to let it install all those. Let's see, let's try this one. So this, you don't really, if you're interested, sometimes IT departments are installing these things, and so they want to run a little, I believe that we have I thought we had a little report or something. Yeah, there we go. Export patch list, right? So you can export that, and then if they want to share with you, hey, I installed all these patches, just in case you want to look, right? Because a lot of our users, some of the more savvy ones, especially, are reading these, like, oh, there's a warning label when the record is not the most current based on effective date. And then if you're a savvy user, if you're a Lisa Eckhart at Franklin County or somebody like that, you're gonna say, I've run into that problem before. I have gotten burned by not looking at a record, looking at the settings on an earn code, or looking at the settings on an employee assignment, and not realizing that it wasn't the most current version. And so now, we have a warning label, and then you're like, oh, I wonder what programs they did that in. Oops. Oh, there were quite a few programs here that we did this in, right? And so ranges and earn codes and job classes now, if you are looking at a job class 12 that is dated 2020, if there's a more current job class 12, we'll show you with a little label. And so it's just a nice function, and if you know if you're a savvy WinCAMS user, that might be interesting to you, and you might file that away in your brain. So you check the patch you want to do, and then you say install patches. It will download it from our FTP site and then install it. Usually takes about that long, and it says installed there. Now on your end, it will now list in the installed patches. We have our patcher set to not mark anything installed if you're doing it here at our office. So I can't show you the installed patches screen, but it just moves the patch over. So so in yours, you'll have a list of installed patches that's very long, presumably, and you can say show patches for, we can go back in time and say, I want to see everything for the last 6 months, etc. But the bottom line is, don't put a bunch of thought into this. Just click that button and hit install. Do it once a week. If you have a lot of trouble with people using things, so let's see if I can. So I'm going to run a program. I am going to, let's see, I know there was job classes, so I'm going to go into job classes. So I'm running job classes. Anybody out in your office or at a remote location or wherever is running job classes. And then I go back to my package manager and I go to where was the thing we were just looking at for effective dates? There we go. So I'm going to try to install this patch here. I'm actually going to I'm not going to install everything. I'm just going to try and install 21537. So it's downloading the patch, and then it says file job classifications could not be installed. It appears to be in use. Now I think the reason it gave me that is, I think there's a different message that it allows me to retry, right? And if I retry, it also can ask me, do you want to use the one that you already downloaded, right? So this is where, if you have any experience with this, you walk around or say, hey, it's not letting me install this patch. And I agree, especially if you have a lot of users, it's kind of hard to install multiple patches when during business hours. So if you're having any trouble with that, just let us know, and we can either help you with a specific patch or we can enhance your maintenance agreement and put it on us. And Brian will install your patches after hours, and you will never have to think about it again. Okay. And if you have that, if you're on an ISM, then when our developers create a patch, it pops up with a message here that says, hey, we're responsible for installing the patches. So don't just tell Randy that he's got a patch available, install it for him. And so, or notify our IT to install it for you. Okay. What else is there in patches? Install older files. I wouldn't really worry about that, but that is an override where we normally will not install an older file. If for whatever reason you have a newer version of something already, and then you're going backwards and installing an older patch, we won't overwrite the newer version with the older version, but we can force that here. Okay. I think that's about it. If you already have this up and you want to refresh the patch list, you can hit that and we'll go grab the patches again. It also can get tricky with test instances that we're going to talk about in a minute here, or a few minutes. It can get a little bit tricky, but we are trying to keep track of what's installed on your live system versus what's installed on your test system. Okay. I think that's about it for patches. But bottom line is just click that one and that one, 2 clicks. Okay. Install everything every time. Okay, so, oh, and I'll show you what happens. Last thing I'll show you is just a little peek at what we actually do when we want to get around that problem with the it running into. So I'm running job classifications. Now, if I go to into my, so this is my WinCAMS, this is our sandbox where we compile into. And if I happen to know what job classifications, what the program is, you can see we've done this before. So I'm gonna just rename it to something else. Windows warns me, allowed me to change it. And now if I install patches, it allowed me to do it. It's a very hokey workaround. And frankly, I don't love it because I'm running job classifications and I'm still using the old program. So I don't have the current version anymore. Anybody who starts it now will have the current version, but I don't really love that. That's a last resort for us. If people need a patch installed and they don't want to wait until after hours. But if that is a problem for you a lot, I'd rather talk about some other solutions like loading local or putting you on an enhanced maintenance agreement. Okay. Schema. Okay, so a lot of our, remember I said there are patches that are for that are scripts, right? To add a field, add a table, manipulate data or whatever. Well, there is, we don't want to rely on always getting that right patch at the right time, et cetera. So we built a program that updates the database schema, okay? And we have a standard database schema that we keep that has that everybody, so even if you don't have a module, if you don't have the roads module, or you don't have the facilities module, you still have all those tables, right, in your database. So in your SQL database, we have a schema program that will get your database, that will compare your database to our standard database and update anything that needs to be updated. That's under File, System, Schema Update. Okay, so so you shouldn't normally have to run this at the beginning of a fiscal year. This gets run, and that's how we sort of create all the tables for the next year's database, right? The new year's database. So this is, I'm not suggesting that you run this on a regular basis, but this can be a last. This is something that gets run at when we set up a new year, and actually if we have access to your system, Brian in our IT will do this for you. But all this does is it downloads our schema, our standard schema, and then compares your system to that, your database to that. So I'm selecting one of my databases. You might have 10. You could also select all. If you have 10 or 20 databases, it could take a while, but what it's going to do is it's pulling down a schema definition file from our system, right? That's from today at 1 minute ago, and then it's going to compare that schema definition to my SQL database in CSC 2015. Okay, and once it gets through this gather schema info step, it's just going to literally, there are 900 or 1,000 tables, I think, that we have in our database. And so it's going to just run through every single table and decide, oh, there's 1,200 now. Okay, it's going to run through and it's going to say, are there any fields missing? Are there any indexes messed up? It's just going to kind of get everything set up. So there's no harm in running this ever, right? You could run this as often as you like. You normally shouldn't need to, but as a last resort, this will oftentimes correct any sort of like weird, ugly errors like field missing or something like that, something that should have been there for at some point in some table we added an effective date field and it didn't make it into my CSC 2015 database. By the way, if that's not obvious, our databases are the 3 letters of your site. So Franklin is FRA and NIA, it's San Mateo is SMA, et cetera, and then the 4-digit year. And if you're in a calendar year, then 2021 is January to December 21. If you're in a July to June calendar year like Oregon or Washington, then it means it's the year of the database is the later half of the later part. So right now Californians are in so NIA in San Mateo is SMA 2021 is her current database, and that runs from July 2020 to June of 2021. Okay, and so it just counts up, and then And we even made it a single click now. It used to do the check, and then you had to come back and say, yes, I want to make these updates. But all it does is it does the check, and then when it's done with the check, it just goes ahead and makes these updates, adds, creates these fixes index problems, finds columns missing. I have no idea why these are missing, and it's just our test, one of our test databases. And these are programs that probably don't get used very much. So as I said, normally we incrementally add on to things, right? And so you're running your patches and we're adding like much more surgical. This is not surgical. This is like a very blunt instrument. This says, mold this database to look exactly like our template database, okay? And if the database was empty, it would just be running down and every table would say table missing, and it's going to create one, right? So you'll see here when we get to 1200 tables. And again, it's going through every single, oh, and by the way, so there's also a second database or another database that is your three-letter code and then CAMS. See that CSC CAMS right there? That's what we call the static database. And that is for tables that we feel do not have there's no useful functionality to having them in each fiscal year repeated. There are still more tables we want to move into there, but there's, now we don't allow, it doesn't allow us to to have a different set of values in 2021 than we did in 2020, but it also means that we don't have to mess around with year end and we don't have to have a second copy, right? So there's lots of tables like your job classes and your position codes and lots of different tables that are just being copied every single year. And it's just a waste. It's not necessary. So this did the update and it's done. Okay. And it tells us that it's completed and it ran the scripts and we're good. And there's even, if people get really into this, there's actually a way to have it check just one table in one database. We can get much more surgical with it. But again, if you're installing all your patches on time and nothing went wrong, then you shouldn't have any, you shouldn't really need this, except for at year end when we're creating a brand new database. And again, usually Brian does that for anyone that he can access. We try it. Our goal is to at least a month, sometimes more, before your new year starts, we want to get into your server, create your database, run the schema, and have it ready so that when you go into year end, it's ready to just start clicking buttons. That's our goal. So sometimes we don't have access, sometimes we don't have authority, and sometimes people want to create their new year 4 months early and then we haven't gotten to it yet. So let us know. Syncing with the model DB. So I did a single DB. If I had said all, it would have run through and continued through the 2 DB databases I have, right? Okay, I wanted to talk a little. We get a lot of questions about test WinCAMS instances. So remember, we have no seat licenses. So some people want to have a test WinCAMS instance. This can be either your IT being really wanting to be really exacting, or it could be because like San Bernardino County wants to they wanted to test out a new billing format, or somebody wants to play around with posting and not mess things up, right? So we normally try to stay out of that world because we're not looking for another instance of WinCAMS to maintain, right? So we're pretty clear that the test database is not our job to manage, but we do end up helping people set it up and explaining it to them a little bit. So what you can do is you can have varying levels of test databases. When IT wants it, they are usually talking about, I want to install this patch and then I want to make sure it works before I release it to install it in the live system. That's an admirable goal. It doesn't work, but don't tell them. That's fine. It's fine. It doesn't matter. I get why they want to do it. It doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because they don't know what they're testing. And even if you test the one thing, if you even test that one thing that Matt was trying to put in there, well, he could have easily, there's 50,000 functions in the repair orders program, and you're not testing all those other functions anyway. What it does do is it can make sure that installing that program doesn't simply break repair orders, so you don't get a crash, which is great. But what San Bernardino and other places wanted to use it for was they said, well, we just want a copy of our WinCAMs. It's not so much that we want to like hold our programs at a certain level and then move some of them forward for the test instance. We just want a database that we can mess up and then replace, right? And we can see what happens if we, you know, do a project billing in this with these checkboxes set, and then with these with those checkboxes set. So that's a really easy setup, and you can do that. You mean almost with no effort. You can literally have your IT, or if you're savvy with SQL, you can have them back up your, you know, XXX 2021 database and then restore it. One way to do it is to restore it as 2051 or 2099 or something like that, and then when you log in, it will come up as one of your available years in your login screen. Okay, and so then you just log in over there, and you know that anything you do in there is just messing around, and it will say future fiscal year 2086 or something like that, right? So that's a very simple way to do it. Now that means you're using the same programs, the same configuration, and a copy of the database. And then your IT, it should be a 5-minute process for them to back up your 2021 database. You can just, and they can, and then say restore it as 2086, right? And then they restore it as 2086, and then they set the security, give you security, give us our security access, and now you've got a test bed that you can play with. Now, if you want a separate set of programs where you're actually able to install programs on the test and install patches on the test that you're not installing on the live, that requires a little bit more work. We need to, you know, tell the configuration of the test system that it's a test system. In most cases, when we do that, it works fine. In most cases, if the IT people aren't really on top of things and really watching and managing that test system, it lags behind, and then they don't know how to keep it up to date, and et cetera, et cetera. And so if you want to do that, I can give you the instructions on how to do that, but it's up to you. I think the most beneficial reason for a test system is just simply an extra database that will allow you to post things without messing things up and be able to really see how different selections affect things, and whatever else you want to do, right? But again, it's generally not our job, and it's not part of our maintenance agreement to maintain that second system. But you're welcome to try it yourself. Okay, I wanted to go through some things in the system menu. So file, system. Now, most things in the settings menu are for individual users, right? So it's going to remember for Bernie Brigham, it's going to remember what he picks here. Like, does he want to have a picture of his dog instead of our logo here? Our old logo, actually, now that I think about it. Does he want his menu items alphabetized? Does he want to hide disabled menu items? Does he want to allow programs to open more than once? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. That's for a person. For you admins, your file and system is where a lot of these things are happening. So month end and year end, I'm going to talk about that in another webinar. That's a whole extra topic, but we'll get to. We talked about the control file. This is where we store a lot of our counters. If we have you know, automatic numbering for repair orders, invoices, AR payments, employees, cash receipts, etc., service requests. So we keep track of that and what the current accounting month and accounting year is. Okay. A really useful tool in the system menu is a post history. So this is a history, exactly what it's called, a post history of all your postings, right? And so, and if you click on any of them, it will tell you what selection criteria went with that posting, right? So this is a test database, so we've got some goofy selection criteria, like we were apparently posting 1 day for 1 employee. Don't recommend that, but that was for a demo or something like that. So I can see that, and it's really nice, especially if we have turnover with a site, or people are like, I need a checklist, I don't know what's going on. So then I say, well, let's just sort by source description or by post source, and then we can just sort of see what's going on. So what we oftentimes see is, oh, okay, labor was posted on October 8th, October 22nd, November 6th, November 24th, right? And then you can sort of see that this is something that's done every 2 weeks or every month or whatever. And you can also see who did it, and what accounting month it went into, and when it was done, when it actually took place. And as I said, you can see the selection criteria. Now, a new feature in here, fairly new, is so you're probably familiar with posting to accounting months, right? So in time card labor, there's no option. We post to whatever accounting month that particular time card belongs to, based on your pay periods. There's no option to like back. You can backdate something, but then it'll go into the appropriate accounting month. But in post invoices, or here we go, in invoice posting, you can choose, and it will default to the accounting month. When you post, will default to the current accounting month, right? So it'll default to 01 if I went into post invoices right now, because 01 is July in this particular case. We get people that tell us fairly often that they didn't mean to post it to 02, so then they want to move. They meant to be in 03. They wanted to post it to the 3rd month. So we now have, for many of our posting programs, not all, we have, you can highlight this line, and this button here allows you to change so it was in 02. Let's go to 03. It's running through all the tables, right? So it found 16 records in 9 tables for post batch 7007 that were, so these are the invoices themselves. These are the post history. As you can see, it now says 03. Like a road expenditure detail, a budget expenditure detail, whatever the destinations of these postings were. So we don't have it for all the postings, but for some of them, it's that easy now. Okay. And so if you ever forget, or we have people that do very detailed postings where they pick a division by division in time cards or something like that, and you can't remember which one you did, that's all listed here, and you can sort and search and all that. Okay. Let's see, other things in the system menu that are cool. Configuration. These are our configuration files. And the main one is called the system configuration. I wouldn't mess with it, but sometimes we ask users to get in there, and not users, admins, to get in there and turn something on or off for us. We usually can do it through our patching system or manually. Okay. There's a big red warning at the top, but that's what that is. A lot of these are for us. Field information, that's the way that when we have a 32 byte or a 16 byte field in the database, and we want to mask it or shape it for you, right? So your budgets or your bars numbers, if you're in Washington, are they're 32 bytes underneath, and then we set them. We have a setup, right? Like your fund and your department, or your base sub, or your whatever, your account number. That is all contained in the field information. So that's a big table that controls all that. Detailed record viewer is it's something that we use. It's a generic tool that allows us to look at any table and just see the records in it. And and it's, you know, so here's field information, here's the post history table, right? We just want to look at the raw records, basically, similar to what you could do in a management studio in SQL. Database benchmark testing. So this has been coming up lately. If you have any issues with users complaining about speed, like CAMS performance, basically, I'm happy to discuss it. So a couple things you should know. One is CAMS is not a light on its feet system, right? We are a client server system that is processing just a ton of data, and we are not Fred Astaire. We are we're heavy-handed. So, but we still need to be reasonable. And most of the 9.5 times out of 10, when people say WinCAMS is slowing down, especially slowing down substantially, there are reasons for it that are not in our control, but we can help. Okay, so a lot of time we've had lots of problems with antivirus. You know, you're pulling programs, executable programs, from a server down onto your workstation to run them. So if there's a long pause before you see the splash screen, something is wrong. So we have people that go, it's weird, it takes a minute before I even see the little loading invoices or whatever. Well, that's not us. That's something is trying to check that before you pull it off of the server, and we can usually whitelist our folders and get massive improvements. Then the other thing is the second most common culprit is the pipeline between your workstation and the server, right? So the server is rarely overmatched. It does happen, but it's not that common. SQL servers are pretty awesome at managing data, but the pipeline from your workstation to your server can have bottlenecks, can be, you know, too thin. And I've had 10,000 conversations with IT people that say we've got a 10 megabit Ethernet superstar Space Force laser network. I don't really know what that means. Frankly, I don't really care. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is that we are asking for 10 pounds of data and it's doling it out 1 pound every 5 seconds, which is 50 seconds. And that's not cool. Sometimes if it's a specific function where people say, hey, the time card audit trail has gotten really slow, well, then sometimes we can update that particular program and, you know, figure out what we did. We added a feature and it took 0.1 seconds, but you have 10,000 records, so 0.1 seconds is actually 1,000 seconds, right? So that's no good. And then, so we built this database benchmark testing, which is kind of interesting so you can select any number of records. It's not really any reason to go big. I'm just going to do 5,000, and it will it'll perform a bunch of inserts, edits, all the operations that we might do in your workstation or on your database, and give you a time and a records per second and a green, yellow, red setup. Okay, so I'm going to get all greens and yellows. Maybe I'll get all greens. Maybe it's and what can affect this? Obviously, the power of your SQL server and how bogged down it is, right? So if you have a lot of users, some people have SQL servers that are doing other work at the same time, that have other applications on them, you know, whatever. So it's the power of your SQL server and the speed of your SQL server, but then more importantly, it's the passing back and forth. It's that it's that pipe between you and the database. So I've run this where people are saying, I'm having performance problems. We run it on their workstation and it comes up all red. Okay, so it's a big difference getting 714 edits per second than it is getting 27 edits per second. Massive difference, right? And if you're posting time cards and you're in even a halfway reasonable sized agency, we're trying to edit thousands of records when you post time cards. And so, you know, if you're doing 27 records a second, that's not very good. That doesn't feel very good. It's not very acceptable. So, and this has also come up a lot recently, not well in the last year, not a lot, but a few times, people that get moved home or they start working remote because of the pandemic, it gets done in a way that doesn't really work. If you take your computer home and your IT connects you to your server through a VPN connection, that is not going to work super great. That means you are pulling data from your SQL server through basically the internet and then down into your home. So you have lots of different pipes there, lots of different opportunities for bottlenecks, right? And not the least of which is your internet connection at home, right? And there are other ways to get that done that allow you to not have that bottleneck. And so sometimes it just becomes a little bit like when your TV doesn't work and you try your Xbox or you try your antenna or your DVD player, if whatever trying to figure out unplugging and plugging in things to find out, is it the power cable, is it the actual is it the source of the data, so we want to try different workstations, we try different things. I can access most of your systems from Eugene and get screaming fast performance. So there is no real reason that you can't get the same. And if you still have performance problems, and we've tried everything we can try, and we've worked with your IT, and we've done everything we can do, then I'd start to like to talk about hosting. So we have a hosted demo that we have several hosted demos where we can show you. You can access it basically through a browser. It works different ways, but you basically can access it from anywhere. You don't need a server. You don't need to do backups. It's 100% uptime, and it's screaming fast, and it's the same speed for everyone. And it doesn't matter whether you're, in an iPhone hotspot or anywhere where you can run that browser, you should be good because you're running it on that hosted server. Now, that's super awesome. That sounds great. It costs money. So I'm happy to discuss it with you and get you a price quote if you're interested and you want to just take the entire connectivity, the entire installation of everything, take all that off of your plate or off of your IT's plate, and never buy servers again, none of that stuff. We can do that. And it's especially cost effective for smaller places. They want the host wants the charges per user per month. So if you have 200 users, that adds up pretty significantly. Although, if you're already paying your IT $20,000 a year to manage your server, and you could get out from that bill, maybe it's worthwhile. But I was actually talking to Adams County in Ritzville, Washington the other day, demoing it to them, and he's like, we feel like with our performance struggles in fighting with our IT and trying to figure this out, we're wasting a lot of money anyway by people not being able to effectively use WinCAMS. And it is such a game changer when things start quickly and move quickly, and you can do things and so we have numerous places, and certainly the hosted places are faster than what you're seeing on my system. They're substantially faster. That said, WinCAMS is never going to be a tap dancer. If it takes a little while to start up, just like Adobe does, just like Excel does, just like and they're running on your workstation generally, right? And I have to go ask for data over and over from something that might be in another building or go through a pipe. So that's an interesting thing, database benchmark testing, if you ever want to test a workstation and its connectivity. A couple other things that are in here, diagnostics, these are kind of cool. If we're ever trying to figure out what's going on with your connection or with your workstation, or we just can't figure something out, and if we come up with an error and we say send a you can send it to CSS support. You could also just go to File and System and do the diagnostic here, right? So you can just say test.txt and save it, and it will perform a diagnostic and save it. if we're able to get out of your firewall and connect, we can send to CSS support right away. If that doesn't work, you can do what I just did and go look for the file that I made, test.txt, and that's what it looks like. And it just tells us things about your machine, about your, what processes are running here, right? All kinds of diagnostics. It's very long. It's not very interesting to read, but it can help our developers troubleshoot things for you. Okay. So back to the configuration as well. There's a system configuration file, and then there are individual user configuration files. The system configuration file controls lots of options that are true for everyone, right? It's got all kinds of random stuff about your options. I wouldn't really think about it much. Your user configuration file, there's one for every user, okay? And that is where we store things like when Ayren moved some columns around in his grids, or or my time card template, right? If I set up a time card template for myself, or my settings of which columns I want to see in my time cards, or whether I work weekends or overtime or that kind of stuff. That's all stored there in the user configuration files. And it's much the same. I don't expect you to, as an admin, want to mess with those. But sometimes we'll guide you to those. And if you ever have a problem with somebody saying, hey, I moved columns around in invoices or something, and then next time I went in, I had to move them again. Well, then there's something probably corrupt or broken in their user configuration file, and we can clear that out and start them over and get them rolling again. Talked about schema update. Linked files maintenance is a program. Oops, let me close the schema. Linked files maintenance is a program that Chris wrote. It's pretty cool. So we would get people that would say, okay, so we moved to a new server, or we did a server migration, and now all of a sudden all the paths to our linked files are broken. So they used to say like M drive or whatever, and now that doesn't exist anymore, or it looks different. So this can do a bunch of things. This can run a report on all the linked files that you have. It can do this. It can check whether the files still exist, right? Because all the linked files throughout CAMS are a pointer to a file, either in our area or where you told us to put it, or something like that. We're not storing the actual. Well, we can copy the file, but it could also get removed, or like I said, that entire directory structure could be renamed by your IT. So we can delete broken links, which basically just gets rid of linked file pointers that don't have a file at the end of them anymore. Or this one says replace path. So you can say, okay, I want all my linked files that say h:/test to now point to the exact same structure, but it's now called m:/test. Okay. Or the entire new path to linked files, right? So, and it will run through all of your linked files, and then okay, and well, I don't have any that are in the H, but and I can browse here too. So that allows you to make sure that when things move, or if you want to rename your linked files setup, you can, as long as you do it consistently, you can have an old path and a new path. Let's see here. Oh, this also has a template path. So if you are saving report templates and then those get moved and you can't find them anymore, we can move all those for you too. And report templates are when you're in a report and you set it all up and save it, and then we go in here and we say save report templates, and then you've got them available to you here. If you don't know what those are, you definitely want to, and you definitely want to be using these. And I have videos about them, or you can reach out to me and I can explain them to you. they make WinCAMS reporting a lot more fun and a lot easier and simple. Okay, I feel like we touched on everything. Does anybody have any questions or anything I forgot? I've got notes on Sue. I see your request there, and Nia and Sue both want, and Chrissy also wanted to find out more about locks. Let me know if you, access trouble tickets. Thanks. So that is file system update. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. You can't access trouble tickets if that's what you're saying. System update is where you access patches. Trouble tickets is our internal system. We don't, that's not you can't see the ticket. We don't have a method for you to say, oh, here's my trouble ticket 26180. It looks like it was resolved a couple days ago or whatever. So we don't have user access to that. Although it's not a bad idea. We could probably add it to our patcher or something, you know, sort of show me the status of any trouble tickets that have my client name on them. I'd have to make sure that my guys, you know, we do this with our facilities clients where they have they open up our service request to the web. Well, right. So if you know, and if you open up the service request to the web, then they have to suddenly get much more careful about what they say in the service request, right? So, Chrissy, yeah, I'm just saying, if you know, like, a lot of times a developer will say, okay, great, I got your request, Randy, and I've assigned it to Matt under ticket 26180. Then if Randy does, you know, if it lags and sits around, then Randy wants to reach out, he can reference 26180 and any of our developers can find it. Of course, we can find it if he just says, hey, I'm wondering about my problem, and we can just say, well, show me all the Deschutes stuff, or we can seek it out. But if you know your trouble ticket number. So Danielle would like to be able to see the service tickets for her office. Yeah, we'll look into. I don't know if I presume you're talking about our service tickets. I'd have to think about where we'd want to expose those. But we could see we could show you what the status of them are. Yeah, that's normally we manage it internally based on emails, calls, letters, whatever. But yeah, we could certainly query it and show you what's going on. And then you would know. And we do that with our service requests in the if you get our web and mobile version of service requests, then your customers can see what's going on with your workflow. And so we could do the same. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I think that's it. And I will, once this video processes, I'll post it on YouTube under the WinCAMS channel and on our website. And you'll be hearing from me about the next topic. Please send me topics that you'd like me to do for these short webinars, couple-hour webinars. I'd love to find out more about what people are interested in and what's difficult about WinCAMS, or what we could show you. And if you have any questions about modules you have or don't have, I'd be happy to work with you individually. And if you have, or if you come up with any questions about what we talked about here today, or good ideas like being able to see trouble tickets online, let me know. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great Tuesday.